Hello folks and welcome to this Flight Simulator 2020 video. Today I have a little bit of a special thing. I made this because obviously I haven't really made that much Flight Simulator content on my channel before. I wanted to get started and I didn't really know where to start. It's a very graphics intensive game, as you can imagine, so yeah. The truth is I fly for a virtual airline called Star Alliance Virtual Airline. You can fly basically any route in the Star Alliance network in there, and yeah, pretend to be a pilot. I am not a pilot in real life, so I make a bunch of mistakes, and you will definitely see them. Also, getting the hang of the A320 Neo in the simulator as it is, or as it was in these patches, was kind of weird because it has a few bugs that are still not fixed, and then in the latest patch as of September, there's some new bugs that aren't fixed, or rather they introduced some new bugs. Anyway, the first leg of this flight is between Berlin and Brussels. So I flew a Belgian Airlines flight, but with an SAS livery because I didn't have a Belgian, or is it Brussels Airways? Brussels Airlines? My god, so terrible. I should know my stuff. But yeah, it was takeoff was kind of rough there. The autopilot seems to want to, if you turn on the autopilot too early, it likes to bank up over 20 degrees or even 15, which is very steep. It's not very nice, and yeah, I kept not noticing it until after the fact, because I use an ACAR system for the virtual airline that tracks kind of what I do. And I had already flown the A320 before in Flight Simulator, short hop between Stockholm and Berlin to start this tour. But of course, still getting the hang of this as we were doing this. Beautiful views out of the window there. Although I've noticed, at least on my machine, that at night it gets quite dark. It's kind of hard to see the plane sometimes. Obviously, it's realistic in that sense, but I'm sure I can change the settings to kind of have some more visibility, at least, of the plane itself on the outside view. Here we are coming in for the landing in Brussels. You can see maybe that it kind of lags a little bit. I'm using head tracking at this point, some free software, OpenTrack, AI, and so that's why it kind of like jitters out of the window a little bit sometimes, which is unfortunate. Otherwise, it's kind of cool. Although lately I kind of stopped using it because it kind of jitters too much sometimes, depending on the lighting. And here you can see it calls out 20. I flare a little bit too much, but this is the thing: the A320 seems to have a tendency to float a lot, so we definitely floated quite a bit there. And made, I wouldn't call it a rough landing, but not the best of landings. In fact, my logbook, I believe, says that the landing was 211 feet per minute, which is fine, you know. It's not bad, actually. And then the next flight was also a Brussels Airlines. Wait, I need to double check. Yeah, Brussels Airlines flight to Geneva. And in Geneva, but I didn't have the Brussels Airlines livery, so I pretended that I was flying Swiss. And yeah, I think yeah, it's the only day flight in this section. I think it was 7 legs that I had to do, so the next few ones we're gonna see are Geneva to Munich, Munich to Athens, Athens to Istanbul, Istanbul to Frankfurt, and Frankfurt back to Berlin, finally. Flight Simulator, I used to fly it quite a lot when I was younger. Flight Simulator X especially, and then I kind of took a pause because of life and stuff, for the past basically 10 years. And I was, of course, much younger, so I didn't really know much about what I was doing, but I had picked up at least quite a bit to feel comfortable in the stuff that or jumping back into a virtual airline, as I have decided to do now that Flight Simulator 2020 is here. I know that the community in general that has kept on using in-flight simulators and are obviously way more experienced than I am, a lot of people have decided not to use Flight Simulator 2020 until there are more planes and a lot of things are fixed. And I can understand that, but I just really like the visuals in Flight Simulator 2020, so that's what I'm going to do. And hopefully I'll be streaming. I just have to figure out how I can do that without lowering my graphic settings too much. I mean, this is like ultra, but with certain things lowered, some textures and shadow mapping, I think. Bloom is off. Lens flare I don't like, and bloom I don't like because it's supposed to mimic a camera, so obviously it's like you're watching a video of the thing instead of actually watching the it's not as realistic, right? But it can give you that cinematic effect if you want it. Anyway, you can see that the landing there, we shook quite a bit. It was kind of violent. It's almost like the plane didn't want me to roll. And then it was rolling a little bit too much. So I don't really know what was going on there. Again, this was it's the second leg in this route, and it was the third flight I had done with the A320 in FS 2020. I was not using at this point the A320 Neo or NX mod, and I don't think I haven't really flown with it yet, because just as I decided to fly with it, the new patch for Flight Simulator came out, and then the new plane wasn't really working anymore with, or the mod wasn't really working with the simulator anymore, and even the base plane kind of got buggy there at the end of September. Hopefully it's going to be fixed soon, or has been fixed. I don't really know. It's been a couple days since I last flew, but basically what happens, one of the main problems even with the base plane right now, is that if you turn APU off, as you should, after leaving the gate, and then you take off, engine 1 will shut down after takeoff, which is obviously an emergency, and you can't really do that. But if you leave the APU on, it does work. Obviously, that's not optimal or realistic, but it's annoying that it's there. You'd think that a patch which fixes a bunch of things wouldn't introduce such a major flaw back into the simulator. Here again, using head tracking, we're flying over Alsace-Lorraine, I believe, because we had to fly quite far, or at least the route I took flew us quite far eastwards. And here's the approach into Geneva Airport. I do believe this one we float quite a bit as well. In fact, let me double check here. The landing though does seem to be smoother marginally than the other one. We also don't really hit the center line as far as I can remember. Let's see here. Yeah, you can see we floated, the flare made us go up a bit, and then, yeah, kind of close enough to the center. This is us arriving at Geneva Airport. They have these satellite gates, which are kind of interesting. So the jetway seems to connect to the back of the plane from the port side, or sorry, the starboard side rather than the port side. Here is, it's Lufthansa, and this is actually a Lufthansa flight between Geneva and Munich. Engines starting up there. And yeah, I think it was just a short hop, so the footage here doesn't really show that much. I think the takeoff was pretty decent. I can't really remember. We might have had some pitching up problems. The landing was quite rough though, as we'll see in a second. Also, sometimes, I don't know if it's the wind. Here we didn't really have much of a problem with it. Sometimes I have problems keeping the plane centered because the sensitivity on my rudder. So I have a Logitech 3D Extreme Pro. I've had it for over 10 years. I used to use it with Flight Simulator X. What is it? So 13 years ago already. And yeah, the rudder, the entire joystick is very sensitive. So and there's no way to change it in the simulator, unfortunately. It's very strange because you can add a dead zone, but it doesn't really. That just makes the sensitivity outside of the dead zone even more sensitive, right? You can't, as far as I'm aware, make it less sensitive. So any like motion on my hand that's a little bit too much, or will just translate into a much rougher motion in the simulator. Honestly, I'm kind of hoping to get the rudder pedal set, and maybe even the Thrustmaster TCA Airbus Officer Pack, because I'm just a huge Airbus fan. Growing up on planes, I flew a lot of Airbus. I mean, I've flown a lot of Boeing too, but I just love the Airbus, especially the A340-600. It's just such a beauty. I mean, for some people it's a little bit too long and thin and weird, but I just like yeah, you can see there. I just wasn't. There's something with this plane. I think it's so basically, the autopilot, the managed speed doesn't allow you to, like, it comes in a little bit too fast, basically. And that then, because if it goes a little bit too low off of floor, then the sides should kick in, and you'll just get a go-around, an automatic go-around, basically, which sucks. And so the autopilot, for some reason, decides to always come in a little bit too fast, and then you have to bleed off that speed, and you always seem to float a little bit. So I don't really have a solution for that yet. Thankfully, it's the A320. You don't need that much runway. But if you're in a bigger plane, yeah, it's vital to actually hit the touchdown area and not float too far. Now, this is the leg between Munich and Athens, and I was on live players with live traffic, and I thought, oh, this is going to be more serious, people are more serious here, but then suddenly this other airliner just spawns on the runway, and I have to keep waiting. I waited a couple minutes, they didn't take off, and then when I actually placed myself behind them, they decided to take off. But then it becomes even more crazy, because I used to think that, okay, so this live player thing, it's gonna have shared ATC or something of the sort. But ATC wasn't doing anything at this point, so I don't think it does anything like that. The live traffic does have the ATC on, but it doesn't seem to share the ATC with live players. So that, yeah, you can see, okay, I see that the other plane has successfully taken off, and then I decide, okay, time to take off. I had the clearance from before anyway, and just as we are approaching V1, I realize, or even before that, I think by 80 knots, I realized that there's another plane at the other end of the runway, and boom, there we go. So right before we roll, it just passes right above us, and it's a close one. I mean, we would probably have hit some wake turbulence there. But thankfully, small plane, or it's not a small plane, but you know, it's just that would never happen in real life. And it's kind of annoying. It was cool, a cool image, but it's slightly annoying. I'm happy we didn't have to actually go through it. I was terrified that my crash settings would make me crash or something, or maybe, you know, you fly this long 3-4 hour leg and then you arrive at the airport only to have someone else take off and crash into you or something like that, or someone on the runway, which we will see, I think, at some point here. So this is the approach into Athens, and this landing was also quite hard. The Munich one was 449 feet per minute, and this one in Athens is 428 feet per minute. And again, I do think we float quite a bit. Because here's the thing, I think traditionally you just see, and then we're shaking again because of sensitivity, and I'm like afraid of stalling and getting a hard landing by stalling or just floating too far. Obviously you can always go around, that's the rule, right? But it's very frustrating when you've had a perfect approach, everything's working fine, and it's basically just because the managed speed is slightly broken, as far as I'm aware. Maybe someone is much better and can tell me how to actually properly land, but as far as I can tell, there's way too much. There's nothing I can do about it unless I actually use I myself manage the speed manually. Then it's fine, because I've done it a couple times, but then suddenly the new patch came around, and not only does the APU thing have a problem, but you actually also have a problem with the speed indicator, because the autopilot, you'll have the speed in knots and the speed in Mach number, right? And it will automatically adjust your Mach once you're at a certain altitude, and then back to speed when you're down. But with a new patch, you can't switch it back from Mach to speed or to knots. So it's very frustrating. And here you'll notice that the sound for the engines and the environment is gone because I made a very, very stupid mistake. In my switching around between terrible takeoff as well, not even centered. We had to roll there a bit, but basically I was switching around between headset and my screen, and that then turned off the sound and changed the default sound, and so the sound wouldn't even come back apparently. Oh well, my bad. So here is the approach into Istanbul. Technically this route on the virtual airline network is actually scheduled for the new Istanbul airport. It's a big airport. I think it started taking in civil aviation or civil traffic this year, at the beginning of this year or the end of last year. Unfortunately, that airport is not in Flight Simulator 2020. I don't know why. I guess Bing Maps didn't survey everything, or maybe it did, because if you fly there, I think the images do show runways, but for some reason you have to fly into the old Istanbul airport, which I don't mind, but yeah, it's kind of weird. It's one of the biggest airports in Europe as well, so again, shaking, and then boom, horrible there. We're not even in the center. Curiously, that landing was actually only or quite smooth in terms of the actual touchdown, only 99 feet per minute, and I guess, but it was terrible. And here you can see, I'm getting ready. I got the clearance to take off, and suddenly this general aviation aircraft, I think it's a Cessna, just comes in for the landing. Very strange. So live traffic, and live players does not really. I mean, it is more serious. You don't see people doing crazy silly things, but it's still silly. So maybe I'll start flying on VATSIM. The thing with VATSIM is like the plane has to have a certain degree of quality, I feel, and I have to be one with the plane. And at the moment, I still don't feel like I'm one with the plane. And also the FMCU, Flight Management Computer Unit, or I always forget which is which on the Boeing and the Airbus. There are different names: FMC, FMCU, FMS. But basically, the FMS, I'll call it the FMS in the Airbus, I might be totally wrong, has a problem, or it doesn't have a problem, it has a bunch of things missing. So at least it was modeled in a default aircraft, which wasn't a thing in Flight Simulator X, but you can't do holding patterns, you can't do a bunch of maneuvers, there's no, like, there's a lot of screens missing, but it's especially the holding pattern thing that's kind of frustrating. So yeah, you could do a holding pattern manually, but that you have to be one with the plane, etc. And the clicking around in the plane when you're flying on, like, with just one screen is kind of, it works, but I think, I can't imagine trying to deal with ATC people in the and actually flying at the same time. I'm not at that level yet, I guess. Thankfully, VATSIM's voice codec has supposedly been upgraded quite a lot. I remember many years ago thinking, oh, VATSIM sounds nice, and then you go to observe and you can't understand a single word anyone says. But supposedly that's a lot better nowadays, so maybe I'll try. And again, I don't know about, like, it's the more Flight Simulator always has these things, you get a bunch of things and then they suddenly you're running a bunch of programs at the same time, and the Flight Simulator itself is already super heavy on graphics and things, so VATSIM plus streaming plus a bunch of apps and stuff, I don't know, but definitely I'll be hopefully streaming if people are interested. I think there are a lot of fun flights that could be had. I just have to set up, I guess, maybe not Streamlabs or whatever it is, but things to have interactions with around. What I would love, though, of course, is the Thrustmaster TCA thing, because, and with the, supposedly the throttle control will also have add-ons. I haven't seen anyone actually try the throttle controls. I guess it hasn't really been released yet. But there will be an add-on on the side as well, so you can have like the flaps and things and the gear. And yeah, that would be very nice. I would also love an FCU, so the top panel there with the all the knobs. That would be very nice. Obviously a real cockpit, a home cockpit would be very nice, but at least some sort of like overhead panel where I can change the headings and things manually without having to move my mouse in the game. Would be very nice. And also, so where's, right, we are taking off from, I forget, right, we already landed in Istanbul. I've been talking for so long. Yes, and then we flew back from Istanbul to Frankfurt. The Frankfurt landing was 199 feet per minute, but then on the last, this is the last leg. Beautiful, by the way. Lovely, lovely. I'm actually so angry that we don't have the sounds from the simulator, because it's just added so much. And I was actually, during this flight, I was using FS2 Crew. I was going to do a review of it. I'm still going to do a review of it, but I had thought that this was going to be the video for the review, or that section. I could reuse the area there, or the snippet. But yeah, anyway, this flight was with the new patch, so a lot of things broke, and basically when I scroll as well, sometimes if I click out and scroll, all the lights on my panels would just turn to 0, so I had to quickly like put the lights back on, and that was very frustrating. Again, the APU thing as well was broken, along with a bunch of other things. And I mean, the landing, technically, according to ACARS, was really good. I can spoil it now and say that it was 5 feet per minute, but I don't really recall if we floated much or if we bounced. I almost think we did bounce. Or maybe I was just really good. Let's double check here. Again, the sounds would make a difference. And there we go. Flare. I was flaring a lot less because I realized since it reacts so violently. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so we didn't... Yeah, we kind of bounced, but it was already a very, very smooth touchdown. We bounced a slight bit and then softly landed again. So that was nice. So yeah, I think this is where we wrap it up. This is the end of the video. I hope you have enjoyed it. I know the sound was off there for a bit, but again, I hope to stream in the future, and I really would enjoy if people watch, or let me know if you want to watch streams like that or more content like this. But yeah, anyway, this has been Game Gabster. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you later. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Bye bye.